Hello and welcome back to Angie B Crafts. So today is the next JMC and Angie B collaboration. So this is what we are allowed to use for our collaboration. We have a set of Dylusion stamps by Ranger. So these are from Dyan Reavley, and this set is called Doodle Parts, and it's a fab set. It's got these toadstooly type things, funny little bits of hair, I suppose, or grass, or I don't quite know what you'd call them. I suppose you can use them for different things. If you like any of the Dyan Reavley style, she uses this kind of thing as hair a lot with her characters that she does, which is brilliant. We've got this squiggly little arrow that's on a corner, but obviously you can split it. 3 different sets of leaves, and then again you could use that as hair or you could use it as an edge. But it's a really nice little set, but it's a set, to be honest, that I haven't used very much. So that's the set that we've decided we both have, so let's go with that. So what else have we thrown into the mix? Well, we've said we can use these fabulous stencils. I finally used my rainbow stencil. These stencils are from the amazing Emma Blake, and they're made by Clever Prints, and they're just fabulous. You can see how much I love this. It's just got every colour on it. It's brilliant. I love this flower. I'm not very flowery in the work that I do, the things I create, but I just love this. I think it's fab. So we've got this wonderful stencil, and then we have the rainbow one. Now I know this one is Julia's favourite. She loves this one. So it's really nice that I've only actually used it once on one other project, and I am so looking forward to using it on this. It's exciting. So we've also got a sheet of sheet music. This is out of a children's music book, I think piano book or something. We can have 3 Distress Oxide Sprays, and the colours that we can have are picked raspberry, mustard seed and mermaid lagoon. And if you look at those, they're actually your primary colours, so you can do any other colour from them, which is really nice, particularly with having a rainbow. We can get a rainbow effect because we've got those 3 colours. We can also use 1 ink pad, white pen, black pen, and the substrate is any 7x7 piece of cardboard packaging. So I've chosen this. Now I can't for the life of me remember what it came on, but I remember when it arrived I got very, very excited, and I went rooting when I realised we were doing this. I went rooting for this particular piece because I've been dying to use it, and I hoped, because most of the pieces were very narrow or slightly less wide than this, and I just hoped to have the 7x7, and I got my ruler out and I was just praying, and this was exactly 7 inches wide. So I've just made it a 7-inch square now, which is brilliant. I'm just checking my list. Yeah, that's what we're allowed to use, so that's it. So what are we going to make? Well, I think to start with we need to put some of this paper down, and paper is always good if you tear it. So let's get tearing. I think we'll use this. This has got a little bit more interest on it. It's got little pencil marks and stuff on it, so it's been used. It was actually my mum's, so it's been used by her. And possibly by my brother when he was younger as well, because he was learning the piano at one point. So I'm liking this on here, and then another piece coming in on this side. But I'm going to make this piece a little bit more triangular to pop on there, and I shall show you for why. Let's pop another piece on here. And we'll do that. So there's my 2 pieces. But the reason that I'm wanting to do that is this is the bit that excites me about this piece of card. I know it's quite worrying, but because it's got this, I can start to peel it back, and I'm hoping it's going to come off. I don't want it all back, obviously. Right, we're starting to get a little bit of a peel. There's one corner, and then I'm going to go to the other corner and do the similar thing, just pulling it off. I'm just teasing it, so I'm not yanking it off because I don't want it to tear too much. but look underneath there, look what we've got. That's lovely texture, and I just absolutely think texture is so important when you're doing something like this. So we've got extra texture here because we've got bits hanging off, but what I'm going to do is just roll this a little bit so it looks a little bit like it's curled up. Okay, and then I'll do the same on this corner, and then it's just going to give it that slightly more worn look. Oh, this one's being stubborn. Turn it the other way, see if it'll work. Now if you are struggling with something like this, you can use the end of a paintbrush or something like that just to try and tease it round something, but that's fine with me. So we know we're going to have one piece up here, one piece down here, and it's not going to interfere with them. Okay, I'm not sticking these on yet because I'm thinking I want to use these to add texture and possibly more pieces, but they're going to be my main pieces. So to start with, I'm going to get some colour down. Now that I've exposed these, I am going to do a bit of a roll back and then bring them back up again. So Distress Oxide Sprays are wonderful. They the concept of oxides is that they give a chalky finish, so they're not as crisp a tone as your Distress sprays would be, but they do some wonderful colour mixing, and they're just fab. I'm just looking for a raggy. I've got a penny, that will do. There we go. So the same habit as you is good practice with all of your sprays is to actually have something to wipe the nozzles with. It just prevents them from getting too bunged up. Now it may look like I'm just doing a straight up and down. I'm actually doing a circular, so you can hear the ball, you get the sediment at the bottom, you give it a shake, and it's going to waken it up. It's a bit like a bottle of Orangina, isn't it? Wake the flavour by shaking the bottle. That was something I remember from school trips to France. Give it a wipe. I'm going to leave these lids off actually because I think I'm going to be coming back in with the colours. And then a little bit of the mustard seed. Yeah, I need to remind myself which colours I've lifted up. So you can see we're now starting to get a look at this. We've got orange because the pink and the yellow have mixed. We've got some green because the blue and the yellow have mixed, but then it's almost got a hint of turquoise because of the separation. So this is why using these three colours on any project is really good, because you get, my squirter's going a bit, there we go, it's not as good on the yellow. You get your mix of all the possible different colours, and I just want to encourage a little bit. Look at that, look at those fabulous bits moving. Oh, how glorious is that? And what I'm really liking is this, it's the way it's kind of, we're getting a wave. I don't know how to describe this now. We're getting a wave because of what's underneath. So this honeycomb underneath is making the wave with the card on top as we're adding fluid on top of it. I'm just going to curl this over a little bit. I'm going to put a little spray of the yellow under here, like so. I'm going to do the same on the other side, and then we get the full range underneath as well. Let's add a bit more of the pink underneath on that one, get a bit more orangey going on. So your oxide, look at it, you can see where it's now pooled in all of the different segments. Oh, that looks really cool actually. I'm so glad that I kept hold of this packaging. That movement is glorious. So with your oxides, what also happens, you get them all over yourself, but what also happens is they dry quite well if you do use a heat tool on them. If you add water to them, it gives them a different effect. So if I just show you, let me grab another piece of paper. Just grab a piece from up here, because I'm not wanting to do them in that way on here, but I want to show you what happens with them. So your oxides, if we just put down some colour on here, so just in the same way, this is just a piece of, I think it feels like my super smooth mixed media card. So you can see you get quite a matte finish to them, but if you then add water, it kind of takes the colour back a little bit. So you get a much more chalky look. Okay, so that's what you get if you add the water in. I'm not wanting to add the water this time, but I shall pop that up there and use it in another project. On this one, I'm wanting to keep, you're not going to keep that level of vibrancy because that's because of the water in it, but you will maintain a little bit more vibrancy by not adding the water. So I'll give this a dry off and then I will come back to you. So here we have the nearly dried piece now. There's still a few little puddles, but that's fine. And you can see it's maintained some vibrancy, but it has faded back quite a lot, and that's because of the oxide effect. If it was just Distress inks, it would have actually maintained more vibrancy. So the chalky effect of the oxides is quite different, but I like that. And I don't use them often enough. It's been quite a while since I've used my oxides, so I'm actually quite enjoying using them again for this. Now, what I've decided that I wanted to do with these is to colour them up a little bit, but because I'm me, I need it to have a bit of grunge to it. So I'm going to use the oxides to colour it while I scrunch it. So to start off with, I am going to wet them, just so that I can then scrunch them up before I put the colour on, because I want to still be able to see the different music notes on it, and you'll see some of the colour off my hands is already coming onto here, which again, I'm a very messy crafter, so I am going to get covered in whatever colours I'm using. Oop, there we go, a little bit of yellow. So because these aren't getting used as much, they are getting a little bit claggy, but you know what, if we give a go of using them, they're not going to be as claggy, are they? So we'll just screw that up a little bit. So this again, because we're mixing all the colours together, we're going to get a bit of a different look, and we have got the water added on, so we're going to get a different tone. It's going to start to look, you can see already it's starting to look a little bit more distressed. So the difference between those two, and the only difference in what I've done is that one's now been screwed up, this one hasn't. But I love that these three colours can give you such a massive range. I mean, you've got orange and purple and green that aren't there, but we have them purely because of the way colours interact with each other, which I think is wonderful. Right, so now we have these. That one's gone a little bit ripped. These papers are so old, they really are. And I'm wanting to make sure that we can still see the music underneath. I couldn't remember the word music then, so I'm going to take a little piece of kitchen towel and just pat off, just to take off any areas where there's pooling, because I don't want the pooling. I wasn't bothered about the pooling on there, but I don't want it on here. But look, you get pretty patterns on your kitchen towel. So when I do use kitchen towel, I always keep it till I can use it in another project. But you can see just by scrunching it up, although it's pretty flat now, but by scrunching it up we get lots of lovely variegations and lines, which are really, really cool on your projects, and it adds a little bit of an aged effect. So I'm just going to clear off some of this, and the easiest way to clear off oxides is with a squirt of water. So I'll give it a squirt, and we will use the kitchen towel again and just mop it off. My mat is desperately in need of a really good clean. This is all gloss sprays that don't come off quite as easily. I do need to give it a very good clean. Right, so these now need to be dried off, so I'll give them a blast, and then I'll come back and we'll look at how we're going to start putting it together, and then how we're going to introduce stamps. So here we have those two pieces, they've been dried off now. So if we bring this back in and then figure which way I'm going to go. I've also got some gel medium. I finally got my new pot, so I've not got long left with this pot. Yay! It's exciting when you get new products, even when it's something you know how to use regularly. So I am thinking that these need to stick on here, but I want some more interest in that background, so before I stick them on, because I want that music to still shine through, I don't want to completely cover it. I will be covering it some more, but I don't want to cover it with stamps as such, so I'm going to use the stamps in the background, and then I'm going to put these on and then use the stencils. So I will actually pop my lid back on my gel medium. That would be a good plan. So true to form, I have my VersaFine Clair, I have a stamping block, which, oh, there it is. I really must do something to make these stand out because they never do. And I have my stamp set. So one of the favourites that I have, you can tell it's the most used, it's these two. This one seems to have gone a bit wonky, you can tell I've not used it for a while, but if I heat that up that'll be fine, I can straighten that up. But these two are the two out of this set that I use the most. But I also really like this corner. You don't have to use it as a corner, you can just use it as an arrow. So if we think about where we're going to have our paper, and then if we want an arrow on, we can actually have an arrow on quite nicely. So I could pop an arrow coming over here and one coming down there. Oh, I quite like that idea. In fact, I'm just going to do it. Just do it, as Nike would say. Right, so if you are going to stamp and you don't want to stamp, you've got two, you don't want to stamp the whole stamp, you've got two options. One is to cover it on the stamp, ink it up, and then you've only got the bit that you've inked up. That one went a bit wrong because I'd already pre-stamped that bit. Right, so we want this bit coming in here. Now bearing in mind this isn't a totally flat surface because we've got that pitting, we're not going to get a perfectly clear stamped image. So this is not going to be totally flat, but you know what, that's actually come through better than I expected. I wasn't expecting it to be quite so clear. That's okay with me. Right, I think for this one I'm going to use the other way that you can actually protect your work is by putting a piece of paper on when you're about to stamp, just to protect anything that you don't want to get hit by the stamp. It helps if I have it in a way. I'm just going to unroll that to make it flat, and that makes it easier to stamp. Okay, like so. So I'm controlling where that ink goes, so it's just coming on at the side of the page there, which is brilliant. I do like that. Isn't that just a really cool arrow? So there's the short one and the long one, they just work so well. They add interest so nicely. I wonder how Julie's going to use them. I think one of the things I love about these collaborations is going, oh, I wonder how whoever I'm collaborating with is going to use that. So I'm going to use my raggy to clean up my stamp, which, as you know, isn't something I regularly do, but I'm trying to be better. Okay, so this is my clean raggy. This is how they come out of the wash. They're still covered in ink and paint, but they're not quite as bad as they were. Right, so the other piece out of this that I really like is the leaves, and I'm thinking the leaves might look nice coming out from behind these, almost as if the arrows are pointing at them. Yeah, I think that's what we'll do with the leaves. So I'm just going to have the leaves coming in from the sides, I think, in towards the middle, and we'll see whatever bits are shown are shown. I'm not really concerned where they come through, I just want them to be present. So we'll start with the big one, and we know that's going to come from underneath the big piece of paper. Sorry, you can see my lamp when I use this. So you can see there a little bit more because of the pitting. We're not getting a completely clear image, but I actually think that looks kind of cool, and I'll show you something that you can do just to make that look a little bit more interesting. Add a little bit more ink, and we'll have another one of those. We'll have it coming out this side and off the page. One of the things it's worth thinking about when you're stamping is, do you want it to be the entire image, or are you happy with it to be part of an image or off the page, or how do you want it to look? And it's, your stamps aren't just, I have to stamp this in its entirety. Right, so this is where the small piece is going. So I want to stamp a leaf coming out there. So if we do that, out to the side, like so. Because I know I'm covering this up, I'm not worrying about specifically where it's going to go. So if I show you that now, you can just start to see it popping out. And that's fine, that's exactly what I want. I just want it to be in there. And then spin this round. If that's going to be there, I need some more. I might go on to, I'm going to swap onto the smaller one now, which is going to be really nice, just coming up at the side here. Right, so I want that still peeping out about there. You can see now we've got leaves coming out both sides. I'm quite liking this. Okay, what I'm going to do is give these a blast just to dry it off so that I can move on to the next stage. So I'll use the heat gun and then I will come back to you. So here we have the lovely stamps with the arrows, and they do look random until you know there's going to be the other bits on top of them, but I quite like that. Just realised I might have to do a little cheat, just a little cheat. Right, I'm going to use the rainbow one for starters, and the rainbow one I am going to use, I think I'm going to use it up here, so I'm going to unfold that to do this because I want it on a relatively flat surface, but I want it on the edge. So I'm going to take it just off. You can see there it's just off the end of the card, and I am going to use the fact that these three colours mix. These are the only colours I can use. I can't use ink pads, so I'm going to have to use these to create my rainbow, which is going to be interesting. We're not going to get, I don't think, a really true rainbow colour because we're spraying through, and using spray it's going to go across each of the levels, but we'll see what happens. So if we start with pink at the bottom, I'm not worried that it is going above the others because remember these are all going to mix and give us the other colours of the rainbow. And then the last one is the blue. Lift my finger out of the way there, pop it back down, there we go. Right, so that looks really nice and rainbowy. Let's see what happens when I lift it off. Yay! We have a rainbow in the corner. Right, I'm going to get that piece of card that we sprayed on, and I'm just going to flip this onto it, because why waste your ink? There's no need to. I'm just going to flip that over. The reason I'm using the raggy on top means that if anything leaks out, it just gets absorbed rather than smudging too much over the page. And then we lift it off, and we have another rainbow with hearts around it as well. How cool's that? And you can even do a second and third print off it. And if you want to spray it with water, you get more prints off it. I'll just pop this up a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. Would be helpful. Right. Yep. So that gives us something to work with on another project, which I think looks kind of cool. Even if you just cut that out as a square on the back of a card and put a sentiment on, you've got a really nice card front there. I'm liking it. Okay, so we now have a rainbow. Apologies, I seem to be getting a little tickle. We have a lovely little rainbow, and I also want to use this stencil. can't speak, this stencil. I love, like I said at the beginning, I love this flower. It's just, it's fab. I don't know how else I could describe it. I'm going to use it down in this corner because I want to show as much of it off as possible. So if we think the little piece is going to come down here, I want to show as much of this as possible coming out. So I'm just going to spray on that, and I'm going to use the yellow because I like the idea. We've got blue and we've got yellow going on here, but if they mix, we're going to get a little bit of green and yellow. And we've got some pink already on the stencil, so that might give us some different colours as well. And I'm quite happy that it's gone over the extra bits because that's adding more interest. How cool is that flower? It's just gorgeous. Love it. Love, love, love it. Right, we'll come back onto this piece and I'm going to flip that over and give it a press. I love the colour my finger's gone. It's amazing what entertains you while you're crafting. I do sometimes look at my hands and think their work's about in their own right because they usually have so much stuff on them. Right, so we'll pop the stencils to one side and then we'll bring this back in. Now this again is going to need a little bit of a blast just to dry. You can see these puddles again, you can see it because you can actually see the reflection of the light, but you can see if we need to dry off this rainbow, and what it's done, it has covered up some of the stamping we've done, but I'm quite happy for that to have happened because it just starts to add interest from behind. And the same over here, it's covered up one of the arrows. Actually, it's covered up that arrow as well. But what we can do if we want to is put the arrowhead back in. We'll see how much it shows through at the end because we can use a black pen, so we might put the arrowhead back in. Right, so I'm going to use the heat gun and then I will come back to you. Well, this is how it looks when we've dried it off. As you can see, there's still a couple of little bits that aren't quite dry. So we've got a hint of a rainbow going on here, we've got this lovely flower going on here, but I want to make them pop a little bit more, and one of the ways that we can do that is using our pens. So I've got a white pen and the black pen that I'm going to choose. These are the Jane Davenport pens, which were actually recommended to me by Julia. They're the finishing line pens and they are lovely, a bit lovely. So I'm going to use brush number 1, which is a very fine brush. If I just show you this, it's really, really fine brush pen, it's fab. Very, very fine line. Anyway, that's what I'm going to use. I'm going to redraw in the heads of these arrows. I'm thinking I'm not quite dry enough yet. It's going on a little bit. I think part of the reason it's not going on totally is because I'm not quite dry. But that's fine. We can make do and mend. So I'm just going to draw in the bits that I can see. So it's going to be hints of it. And then we've got the arrowhead connected here. So it's gone behind that petal, that's fine. And on this one, where's the arrowhead? Let me see. Alright, I can see that's actually in a puddle, so I'm not going to draw it on straight off. What I am going to do is start adding in some whites. No, I'm not. I've changed my mind on that one. I'm not going to do that at all now. I'm going to add in some more colour. I want to colour these up a little bit. They're leaves. The leaves generally are green, and I've decided I want to stick with that tone. So what I'm going to do is get my colours and pop them onto my mat. Like so. Probably be quicker if I had a pipette, but you know. This is easy. I do have a pipette somewhere, not quite sure where. And then a little bit of the blue, and we're just going to make our own green. So don't feel when you get things that you have to go out and buy a massive stash of every colour. Not that I would ever do such a thing, obviously. I've done it with so many things. But you don't have to. If you get these 3 colours, and if you've been watching Julia at all over the time she's been doing these videos, she talks about it a lot. The ability to mix colours. And look, you've got that beautiful green now. And now we can just start adding it. And we know where to add it because we can add it wherever there isn't any black, roughly. Doesn't have to be accurate, because all we're doing is filling in where the little divots are. If you remember, this is actually a silhouette stamp, and as such it would be entirely black if it was on a flat surface, but this isn't, so it's not entirely black. I'm going to put some green in. It's no longer a silhouette, it's just a variegated leaf. That's a big word, isn't it? Variegated. I was tempted to say leaf, but no. There we go. So we're starting to get a little bit of colour going in. Remember, that's going to fade back with the aid of drying. And I think once I've done this, what I'm going to do before I add any more bits on is actually let this dry completely. So I'll leave it overnight and then come back to it tomorrow, so that I can make sure that when I put my pen on it, it's not going to damage the pen, because I don't want to damage my pens by using them onto wet inks. There's no point. The pens that we've got are one of our tools, we don't want to lose them. Okay, now even though I know some of these are going underneath, I could get away with only doing some of them. I'm going to do as many as I can, just because it's easier. She says just as she runs out of paint. Let's see. Right, so this is the little one, so do a quick check and make sure it is covered. Yeah, all the ones that are going to be showing are actually covered there, so that's fine. So I'm going to leave that to dry naturally now, and I will come back to this again tomorrow, and we'll see where we get up to, and we'll start to add on the white pen, the black pen, possibly a bit more colouring, and we'll think about a sentiment that's going to go on it as well. Okay. So this is now dried overnight, and it's completely dry, and you can see that fabulous, because of the little hexagons underneath, we've got this beautiful pitting across the whole thing, which just, it makes it look almost watery. This to me now is beginning to look almost ethereal and a bit like somewhere you might find fairies and goblins and the likes. Maybe that's just me. So I said I was going to wait until things were totally dry before I started adding on the extra ink, because I was struggling with it. So we've now got this completely dry, and you can see this is the one that I started on yesterday, so I'm now going to add the other arrow, and just bear in mind it's an approximation. And I think I've finally found something that these Jane Davenport pens won't write on. Let me see if I can get one of my Poscas to work. Right, I'll get my black Posca, see if that'll do the job. Poscas are really cool pens. Now this, you can see I've pretty much abused that because it's covered in a different colour ink, but we'll not worry, it'll work, it will work. Right, there we go, that's drawing on nicely. So I'm going to go over the other one because I actually quite like that being a little bit thicker. So I'm going to go over this one as well. There we go. Now this is now sort of in that area, which I hadn't realised yesterday, I must admit, where the fold is, but that's fine. Doesn't mean it's not usable. I'll take that round, and then it's going to disappear underneath this flower and come out the other side. I like it. I like it. So I like the fact that they've now got a little bit of structure to them. I'm going to put a bit more on this one. That's one of the things that you've not to be afraid of with your stamps. Just because you stamp an image doesn't mean you can't then go over it with a pen, because all that's doing is just adding depth to your image. So you can see now that looks like it's all intertwined behind the rainbow, which looks a bit cool. Right, I also want to add on some white. White pen is a godsend. It's something that I use all the time, and it just means you're starting to add a little bit more depth Now what I'm discovering here is that things don't like to write on top of Distress Oxides, which is interesting. So where there's a thicker layer of Distress Oxide, I'm struggling to get this to cover. So in those little pitted bits, it's not going on quite as well. And do bear in mind when you are putting on your white pen what you're putting it on top of. If it's something that's water reactive, the white pen's actually going to take on the colour of whatever's underneath it, because that's how white pens work. They effectively reinstate the soluble state of whatever's underneath if it's water reactive, and that means you get the colour, so you don't get that stark whiteness. You can see we're starting to get other colours coming in on the white. Down here where it was just on top of black, it stayed white, but on the other bits we're getting it taking on the green, and on here we've got a little bit coming through on the pink. So yeah, don't be surprised if it changes colour, that's perfectly normal. I want some white on here, just like that. Well, white, I say a tint. We'll not call it white because it's not going to be white on top of this. We'll call it a tint. I wonder if my white poster will work better. Which one's finer? 1 mil. 3 mil. I'm just cleaning it off. I am terrible. I use the back of my hand for cleaning off pens all the time, and I don't know that it's necessarily the healthiest. So you can see that's really triggering the colour underneath. So it's just completely picking up the colour underneath, but I'm quite liking the way that's looking, so I'm going to go over all these with it. I like the fact that it's just picking up that tint. And I like just putting these little outlines on. It gives me pleasure. So I'm dying to see what Julia's is like. I'm really intrigued. I love doing these collaborations because the people that I collaborate with are very different than me in the style. So I think that's why it's always interesting, because we get the same stuff. What do we make? And it's always quite interesting that we make very different things, although sometimes they can end up eerily similar. Can't remember if I've done this one and it's just soaked in. No, I don't think I have. And if I have, it doesn't matter, we can just go over it again. My hand's going to be just completely covered soon, isn't it? Right, that's beginning to get a little bit more oomph to it. Let's just make sure we've got plenty of colour on those edges. Fabulous. Right, so going back to the original list of what I can use, I still have some of my sheet of paper and I still have to choose a sentiment. Now I've pulled this sentiment set out which I think it's either a Dawn Bibby one that I've had for donkey's years, or it was a magazine one that again I've had for donkey's years, and you can see there's a lot of them haven't even been used. These two are the two that have been used. You can always tell if my stamps have been used because I don't clean them, but I quite like this sentiment which says happiness comes to us more each time we give it away. So I thought that was quite a nice sentiment, and what I thought I would try, and I don't know if this is going to work, so this could in fact go horribly wrong, but I'm thinking of using it just straight on top of here. Now if it doesn't work, I've got a little patch here that I can cut out, but we shall see. Ink pad, let's see what happens. And I think that's one of the things that I really love about doing crafting, is the fact that you can just try, and if it doesn't work, it's not the end of the world. What have you lost? Not very much. A couple of bits of paper and some of your time where you've learnt something. Because even if it goes horribly wrong, oh no, that's not gone wrong at all, has it? Oh, I quite like that. Even if it goes horribly wrong, you've learnt something from it. So never be afraid that something goes wrong, because it just gives you something that you've learned. Right, I'm going to chop this out, and again, I don't do perfectly straight edges. I have had a thought about how I can maybe back this a little bit. So what I'm going to do is go back to my sprays. So we've got the 3 colours that we were using on the main piece. And I'm going to pop the extra. Where's the other piece? There it is. I'm trying to keep all my bits together. I'm very good at losing bits. And I'm actually going to section off with another piece of paper or card. And I get some. So I'm going to section off this so that I can colour different parts of it. In fact, I'll chop this in half roughly. There we go. And do this, and then give that one colour, and then I'll do another bit and give that another colour, etc, etc, and then we can do some matte and layers on it and see how that looks. So I'm going to go pink for the first layer with my pinkle spray. Come on, one more. There we go. That's my pink done. Then I'm going to shift these over and make it a little bit wider. And I think I'm going to go yellow. I think that's going to make it stand out. And one of the reasons that I'm not worried about using these is these are now going to become backgrounds. So these will be added on to another piece somewhere along the line. I've got loads of bits of paper like that that just get added on. I'm purposely not doing the blue one just at the minute, but I may well come back and do it. So what I need to do now, I'm wondering if we could maybe stamp directly onto there. Right, we'll dry these off and I'll cut them out, and then I'll come back to you and we'll decide on the assemblage. Okay. Right, so I've cut these out into the individual pieces, and my thought process is at the moment to have them like that roughly, and then pop them onto here, which I think might work. Oh yeah, and then we can have it between the arrows like that. How cool is that? But what I want to do, of course, is edge in black, because it just doesn't look right unless it's edged. And I want to edge other bits in black as well. I'm not going to edge these because I want them to look like they're almost coming out, but I do want to reinforce the fold here, and I want to put all around the edge in black. So before I put this on, I want to do all that because I don't want to mucky it up. So I'm going to pop that to one side and take those off and pop them to one side and get a black ink pad. True to form, I've got my little stays on pad because it's fabulous. So I'll start off by doing this. I know I haven't stuck this down yet, but I want to get all that edge blackened on both sides before I fold it, so that when I fold it, it's still got some of that blackness no matter which bit of it you see. So that's why I've not stuck it down just yet. I'm liking how this looks. That rainbow looks really cool. I'm rather pleased with it. Right, let's bring this in. A little bit of black here, just to titivate it. And let's make sure we get some black on these bottom edges as well, because they're going to be on show. So we want them to have the same frameage, if there is such a word as frameage. If there isn't, we've just made it up. Okay. Now I could well end up going in and putting in more black, but this is just the initials so that I can then move on with these pieces. So what I'm going to do with these pieces is, as when I roll them, So you can see now we've still got hints of black on the back. So I'm going to roll it and then I'm going to stick it just using a little bit of Cosmic Shimmer glue. Okay, so I'm going to pop the glue along a couple of points so that it sticks on itself and then sticks on itself again, like so. Then I'm going to balance my scissors on top. Oh no, I'm not. I'm going to make sure it folds down properly first. There we go. And then do the same on the other corner. So you don't need too many hands to do crafting. Honest. So that's roughly where we want it. It's not a perfect roll, but surprisingly enough, that doesn't bother me. There's nothing about my crafting is perfect. It's perfectly imperfect, and that's just the way I like it to be. It's like life. Life's perfect. It's perfectly imperfect. And I love that. I love the chaos and the unknown elements about life and about craft. That's what it's all about. You haven't got a Scooby-Doo, what's going to happen? Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not, but it all happens. So I'm just holding these for a couple of seconds just till they get a grab. Because they're rolled and they want to boing out, that's why I'm using the extra time just holding them still. So what I'll do is keep hold of these for a few minutes, and then once they've set I will come back to you. So these bits now are dried and set. They're not 100% dry, but they're drier than they were. So now we need to think about where everything else is going to go. We know these are going to go here, and we know that the sentiment is going to go on top. So let's get sticking. I'm going to use the same glue because it's what I happen to have to hand. I may well be tempted by more of a gel medium because these are uneven, but I've got this to hand and it'll do the job, so I will use it. And it's just making sure that the edges are stuck, but this isn't going flat. So remember, we're wanting it to have that scrunched look, so we're not wanting it totally flat. I'm not bothered about these bits coming out because they just all add interest. Any bits of glue that add a little bit of a gloss to the overall image, it just adds interest. I feel like I say that a lot in my videos, it adds interest, but it does, and it's something that is really, really important to me when I'm creating. That anything that I do, even if you don't see a lot of it, the intention is to just have something there that fills a gap, and you may not even be aware that it's there because the gap's been filled, but you will be aware if it isn't there, if that makes sense, because the gap's obvious. And interest is a really good way of doing that. I want to make sure that they are on view, that arrow there, and that some of the leaves are on view. Not all of them. We've got quite a few leaves that we can't see, but we can still get hints of them. So it's a layer, and don't ever be scared of covering a layer. It's fine. Even if it's a layer you really like. Seth Apter always says, don't get too attached to a layer. Don't ever get attached to your layers, because if you get attached to them, you're reluctant to cover them. And if you're reluctant to cover them, you're not going to get the same effect. Right, what I'm going to do is edge each layer of this. And I'm going to do that. I'm actually not going to use my ink pad for a change. She says, and then can't find the pen she wants. I am going to use my ink pad. Change of plan, because I can't actually find the pen I was after. So just going to put a little bit of colour on the edges. It's just to make it step up. I'm not going over the edges a lot. I'm not intentionally coming in and making it grungy. I'm just adding, it's almost like adding another layer to make it pop. And then to stick this together, I'm actually going to use double-sided tape because it's flat. double-sided tape is great for sticking flat pieces of paper together. I'm purposely not putting these on top of one another because I'm trying, I'm not saying I will succeed, but I'm trying to not get ink on the centres and lines off each piece. We can try. Okay, double-sided tape, fabulous invention. I remember as a kid used to watch Blue Peter and they'd talk about double-sided tape, and I think, what is this double-sided tape? I didn't know what it was. We never had it. We didn't really do crafting when I was a kid. It wasn't something that, my mum wasn't a crafter as such. She was in a sort of latter years. She loved doing painting. She's really quite skilled at doing watercolour painting, but she never did it with us really. And she wasn't a knitter or a sewer at all. She knew people who could do that much better, so she let them do it. I just don't think it was something that interested her, which is fair enough. I'm not a knitter. I tried knitting when I was a student. My good friend Anne taught me how to knit, and I made a scarf for my teddy, and it was about this wide, and it basically did that all the way down it. It was horrendous. It's got to be the worst scarf ever. I dropped and picked up so many stitches in the process. It was ridiculous. I've just realised I've put that on to there with that. Never mind, we can add the glue on as well. It'll be super sticky. I was going to use glue on that because it's going onto an uneven surface, but we'll not worry about it. There's no need to worry about anything when you're creating, really. What could possibly happen? I do often ask myself, what's the worst that could happen? And the answer is usually nothing too horrendous, really. Right, have I got that the right way around? It looks vaguely the same shape. That's vaguely in the middle. We'll plop it on. And the same on this one. So you can see I've still got some of the pink and the yellow on here. I've not wiped that up yet. So there's a really good chance that we're going to get some cross-contamination of colour. But that just, again, it just kind of draws everything together. Right. So this is roughly, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to trim that down a little bit. I think that's a bit too wide there. So we will trim it, and once we've trimmed it, we'll put some black on it again, because that's going to enable us to then have the neatness that we require. So there's that ink on there, and then we can stick it onto our project. You know what, I think we're nearly done. You know what, no, before I do that, oh, I think I'm going to have to, no, I'm not going to cheat actually, I'm lying, I'm not going to cheat. I was going to cheat, but I'm not. I am going to do some splatters, but I'm not going to do them in white. I'm going to do them in pink actually. I might add some yellow ones on as well, but we can use this for splatters. Oh, I'm liking using these colours, they're so vibrant. I seem to be going through a little bit of a vibrancy thing at the minute in my creations. I'm very into using brighter colours, which is something that I don't often do, but just at the moment I'm rather enjoying it. I mean, I know these dull down, but they are still quite vibrant. They're not as grungy as browns, for example. I'm just going to rotate that because I don't want everything going on at the same point. Oh, I do like it when you add that yellow on. Oh, how cool does that look now? It's got the splats on it. It is amazing how just a little bit of splatting can make things look very, very different. And you will notice I moved this right out of the way. So when we put this on here now, it's going to really stand out, but it's using the same materials, which is brilliant. Right, let's peel these off. There's one. The reason that one was hard to come off was because I was peeling it from the side that I cut, so it was a perfect match, which is why it was being a bit stubborn. Now they've managed to see, that's because I don't clean up. In fact, let's intentionally pick up a few extra ones. So there's some little bits of splatty colour on there, but what I'm thinking is, once this is on, like so, we can actually add some little individual dots. I'm going to add them in blue because we haven't put blue on this. So I'm just putting them in the four corners. That one's on top of yellow, so it's probably going to go a bit green, and that's fine. So they're not going to say raise, they're going to absorb in. But I think that's it done. Let me just check my list to make sure I've used everything. Yeah, I have. I've used everything. You know what? I actually quite like how that's ended up. I hope you've enjoyed that. Don't forget to pop over and see Julia's as well and do the comparison. I will put a link in the information under this, so you can pop over and take a look at Julia's, and hopefully you enjoyed it and you've liked what the outcome is. Why not have a look at me on other social media as well? I've got Facebook, Angie B Crafts, and Instagram is Angie Mary B, and hopefully I will see you again. Thanks for watching. Bye.